I'm Gretchen Helfrich, an attorney here at Lovey & Lovey, and today we get to talk to Josh Tepfer, who is a lawyer with the Exoneration Project, a sister organization of Lovey & Lovey, for those who aren't familiar with it. Josh recently wrote a piece for the project's blog in which he suggested that maybe advocates for criminal justice reform need to be a little more supportive of elected officials and law enforcement leaders who are willing to move a bit on some of the issues that Lovey and the EP and other advocates are concerned about. Hi, Josh.
Hi, Gretchen.
So tell me a little bit about what kind of movement you are seeing that led you to write this piece.
Well, I think it's almost undisputed or really not controversial that criminal justice issues are being discussed in a way publicly and by everyone in a way that we haven't seen in decades, and at least since I've been doing this work. I mean, there's almost no question that the ideas of mass incarceration, police and community relationships, guns, overcriminalization of drugs, and wrongful convictions, which is where I focus my work, are being discussed at a level that I've never seen. So I guess, when I talk about winning, so to speak, that's more what I mean. That the tide has turned where at least people are discussing these issues that I think are close to the hearts of the people I work with and, of course, myself.
What do you think is driving that change? I mean, I guess I'm asking you a deep background question. Why is the tide turning?
Well, I think transparency has a lot to do with it. I think there's really no question that the advent of every one of us having recording devices with us at all times has demonstrated a level of transparency that has previously been swept under the rug or people just didn't know about. So I think just simply awareness. Clearly, the high-profile police shootings of unarmed black men and the Black Lives Matter movement have been extraordinarily powerful vehicles for change. And important moments in recent history.
What about exonerations? I mean, the work that you do. It seems to me, at least here in Illinois, there was certainly a moment when George Ryan was the governor, when it seemed like the scales were falling from their eyes and they were realizing that the criminal justice system maybe didn't work the way people thought it would. Do you think that the publicity surrounding exonerations is part of this change?
Absolutely, I do. I probably, because I'm so watchful of it, I think I'm overly aware of it, so I sometimes wonder how much of a mass readership or following wrongful convictions really have, and I'm really, because I'm so immersed in it, I'm not sure I'm capable of really viewing that. I will say I think there was a moment there when Governor Ryan commuted those death sentences in Illinois where it became really important. It was kind of a fleeting moment, and I think it went away. And certainly, I don't think there has been national conversations about it to the same extent as some of the other issues I've talked about. But I do think there are starting. And I think it's demonstrated most obviously with the advent of, instead of defense-driven or clinical law school-driven innocence projects, but we're now seeing almost monthly a new prosecutor-initiated conviction review units or conviction integrity units popping up throughout the country. And one of the reasons I wrote that piece, and one of the things that bothers me about that is within my community there is a really sarcastic, really, skeptical view of those organizations, and certainly I can share that too. And I think that I think it's generally viewed as the political moment thing to do for people running, elected states attorneys. And what bothers me about that is, so what, right? I mean, maybe you're right. Let's assume that you're right. So what? Like, let's use this opportunity, the establishment of these organizations, and let's capitalize on it. Let's
You mean, so what, in the sense of you don't care particularly what someone's motive is for doing what you think is the right thing, as long as they're doing the right thing?
Exactly. I mean, whatever gets someone there. And I just think it's kind of naive to think that people don't do things, especially people in the public eye, for political reasons. Of course they do. And frankly, maybe I'm going to get in a little bit of trouble with this, but we use politics in the same way, right? I mean, when we're not getting the results that we want in a cooperative way, I make no secret of media advocacy or public advocacy or community building, grassroots organizing, being a part of the work that I do to help my clients get out of prison and help get the reforms that I want. And all of us in the innocence community do that. I mean, I'm not blazing any new ground there. So if to tout what we do and at the same time poo-pooing people who are doing the same thing when it's politically expedient for them, I just don't think that's right.
So you got a little pushback from Eva Nagao, our colleague, who also works with you at the Exoneration Project, saying, a couple of different things, but not endorsing your view, and saying, I think, primarily, we're not really winning. Things aren't as good as that maybe you're painting too rosy a picture. What is your response to Eva's comments?
Yeah, I learned a lot from Eva's comments. I agree with some of them. I told her off the record that I thought she used... I think it's my own fault. I think the word winning was probably a poor choice of words. What I would say is what I said at the outset is that the fact that these issues are being talked about, you see a tide turning at least. I mean, it's not necessarily pointing upwards with any amount of acceleration, but the fact that they're just taking a U-turn at all, I think, is significant. So winning is an overstatement.
So you're not winning, but you have the ball. You're on offense.
That's a nice way to put it. We are on offense, I think, and I think, or at least it's being talked about, and at least there's some education and public education going on about it, and reaching people in a way that we haven't. And where I disagree with Eva is I don't think she ever really disagreed with me. I mean, certainly that we can continue our fight, and I agree with her 100% that she spoke a lot about revolutionaries, and it took the Black Lives Movement revolution to really turn the tide. And I think that's true, but that doesn't mean you can't also pat someone on the back when they do the right thing or give you the result that you want. Again, my work is so focused on wrongful convictions that I use that as an example. And so when people say, well, the prosecutor only agreed to overturn this conviction because it was the political thing to do, again, my answer is, so what? Or how do you know? And neither of the answers are fine with me. And the other thing that bothers me about people's sort of gestalt reactions to prosecutors refusing to agree that a conviction is wrongful, or refusing to kowtow to the public pressure, which is really what it is, because they would only know about it if we were putting the public pressure on, is that wrongful convictions are something different. It's something different than shooting an unarmed black man. I mean, there is evidence in every wrongful conviction case that could be looked at a different way. There's always an explanation. Nobody really knows because there was no video camera that saw the crime happen. So, yes, there can be overwhelming evidence that we think, but to assume nefariously that the prosecutors are just nefariously trying to uphold a wrongful conviction, I think it's unfair, and it's not true generally, and it's frankly hypocritical, because when you assume otherwise, that they're only kowtowing to political pressure when they agree with the wrongful conviction, well, why aren't they doing it in that case? So that's where I sort of get a little bit worked up.
So you're giving a lot more leeway, a lot more of a pass to prosecutors than I would have expected to hear from you. And maybe that's because most of my work happens on the civil side, where you are going after the prosecutor or the investigators and not the conviction itself. And that changes your perspective quite a bit when you have to fight over somebody's conduct as opposed to how we look at the facts. So I'd like you to say a bit more about that. I mean, do you think that the problems in that area, particularly in the wrongful conviction arena, are these happening inadvertently, on accident? I mean, do you think there's no ill will or bad faith going on in the conduct of prosecutors? I'm
No.
painting with a very broad brush here, but I'll let you introduce the subtleties.
Wrongful convictions are caused by mistake. They're caused by inadvertent mistake. They're caused by purposeful misconduct. And they're caused by indifference in many ways. It just depends. There's each of those examples from law enforcement, police, and prosecutors account for all of them. As a wrongful conviction lawyer, I have come to terms, and a reformer, and I consider that a huge part of my work. I have washed my hands of the people who are intentionally committing misconduct. You can't reach them. What am I going to do? I'm not going to, someone who has chosen the path to physically abuse and torture a suspect while in custody, or to systematically and intentionally hide exculpatory evidence, they've chosen their lot in life. That's what they've decided, and no amount of pleading or anything that I can do is going to sort of change their personality. But I do think the majority of law enforcement officers don't fall in that category, and those are the people I want to reach. And I've dedicated a lot of my career to trying to build bridges with those people, and I think very successfully. A case that Gretchen, have been involved in would not have happened, and there was misconduct in that case from law enforcement officers. There's no question about it. But the demonstration or the vindication of our client ultimately would not have happened if it were not from the cooperation of a law enforcement officer, a huge cooperation of a law enforcement officer who I absolutely believe only wanted to solve the crime and do it correctly. And those are the people I want to educate. Those are the people I want to read my blog and listen to me and talk about how we can look forward to make sure these things don't continue to happen and stop them from happening.
So at bottom, it sounds like what you're saying is we can't just keep criticizing these people, because these are the very people we need to reach and change the hearts and minds, so to speak.
Absolutely. I mean, that's probably exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, Josh, thanks very much for talking to me today. If somebody wanted to read your piece, where would they go?
They would go to the Exoneration Project website, and the blog is called the EP Wire.
So that's at www.exonerationproject, all one word, .org/EPWire. Josh Tepfer, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Gretchen.